We go live. Okay, and three, two, one. Okay, not yet. We're going live. Three, two, and one. And here we are, guys. Hello, hello. Happy Saturday from sunny Ireland. Today I have Kyle Miller with me. Kyle, very welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing really excellent. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you
Really,
so
really
much.
happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Kyle, could you tell my audience where you're from and what you do, everything,
Yeah,
everything, so
yeah.
anything about you? Yeah.
Yeah, I live in Pocatello, Idaho. I'm kind of an outdoor guy. I love the outdoors and all of that. So I'm out riding. I ride mountain unicycle and also bike and ski and snowboard and yeah, yeah, I love it. But I specialize in helping people heal from narcissistic abuse, and
Awesome. Yeah.
um, and so it's one of those hot button topics right now, I think,
Yeah.
and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of people throwing the word narcissist around a lot, and um, and it's not always inaccurate with the
Yeah.
people that they are talking about, but it's also not always accurate because
Yeah.
not everyone is a narcissist just because they disagree with us.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone
So
angry calls, oh, you narcissist.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think one of the main things I think in understanding is that boy, ADHD, CPTSD, codependency, a lot of other issues that people have, which a lot of them come from trauma, and a lot of those things from the outside, they look like narcissistic tendencies. And so now they come from a very different place. With codependency, there's tons of different boundary issues, which the way that we handle those boundary issues usually, when it comes out, it looks like, oh my gosh, these are things that narcissists do. And that is true, kind of, but it comes from a different place. And with narcissists, the line that I look at is I look at, okay, so do they have accountability for their actions? Do they have empathy, and do they have compassion for other people? And if they don't have accountability, empathy, or compassion for someone else, then maybe at that point I will say, maybe they are leaning towards being a narcissist. But for, most generally, with everyone else, we can have all kinds of other issues, dysfunctional things, unhealed attachment wounds. If we are not securely attached, that shows up all over the place and
Yeah.
looks like well, and it is toxic behavior, a lot of it.
Yeah. But do
um
they show that kind that toxic behavior at the very beginning of the relationship, or once you're in the relationship, that's when you start seeing those behaviors? How does that work?
I think a lot of times there are little signs, whether or not they have insecure attachment, or if they're codependent, or if they're a narcissist even. There are little signs, but usually, I mean, we're on drugs in the beginning of a relationship.
Mm.
It's all brain drugs. We're in
Mhm.
love, and oh my gosh, this is my person. And it's usually worse too if we don't have, if we haven't worked through and healed a lot of those wounds, whether or not it's old trauma or childhood wounds, or any of those things. Then it's like, oh my gosh, somebody likes me, they're giving me attention, I'm getting, so we're, I
Mhm.
mean, we're literally on drugs, and we're not thinking clearly. Even if we're completely sober, it's all the brain chemicals,
Yeah,
from
yeah,
the love and the connection and all of that. So it makes it really hard for us to see what's
yeah,
really happening, which
yeah.
is which is where we go into after the end of the relationship. We go into this shame cycle where, oh my gosh, I should have seen it, I should have known, I should have gotten out sooner. I mean, all of those shoulda, woulda, coulda. And it's helpful to look back at those things, but it's not helpful for us to beat ourselves up for it.
Yeah.
Because when when you look at the relationship, in throughout the relationship from the beginning to the end of the relationship, we're putting pieces of this puzzle, of this picture of this relationship together. And so as we get each piece, we put it in its place, and we're okay, this is looking like a picture now. This is the picture of the relationship. And so even if we have most of the pieces together in the relationship while we're in it, we don't necessarily get all of the pieces. And those are the things. It's like, oh, I was missing three pieces to complete the picture of this relationship, and I didn't get those until I was out of the relationship. But now I'm going to shame myself for now knowing what the other three pieces were. I should have known it back then when I was in the relationship. Except
Yeah.
we didn't have those pieces. We couldn't we couldn't put the picture together until after we got out of the relationship or at the end of the relationship, whenever it is.
Yeah.
So we don't have the awareness until we have the awareness.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And that's exactly the work that you do, that you help people
Yeah.
to overcome that trauma that they experienced, or people who got out of this relationship, right?
Hmm.
You're
Yep.
helping
Yeah.
them to heal and to see. And is it possible then completely like, oh, next time I'm not gonna make the same mistake? And then here you go again. You're just familiar with the same pattern, with the same kind of, I don't know
Yeah.
what it is, but yeah, why people do get again and again making the same mistakes then, if they already
It's
learned the lesson.
Yeah, well, and that's part of the problem, and not for us to shame ourselves or judge
Mm,
ourselves, beat ourselves up for, but we usually don't learn the lesson until we've gone through the healing. And it's because these relationships are comfortable. It's comfortable to be in the chaos and drama, which is a lot of, whether or not it's narcissists or not, or unhealthy attachment, any of the other things, we literally we're drawn towards the drama and the chaos. And and so um, so working through and really stabilizing our nervous system, and then because that's really when the real work comes. We get out of the relationship with a narcissist. We talk about all the, it's really helpful to learn about narcissism and to work through all of those things until it's not. And at a certain point, then it's not healthy to continue to focus on all of that, because now it's like, okay, we get to look at ourselves and go, okay, what things do I need to work on? And it's not to diminish the abuse, or make excuses for it or anything else, because there is no excuse for the
mhm,
abuse. But at a
mhm,
certain point, we have to do the work ourselves so that we're comfortable then with healthy relationships, with healthy people, with
mhm,
peace, with peace in our lives. I mean, most of us, I don't want to say for everyone, but I want to say most of us, we get out of these relationships and we perpetuate chaos in our own lives, even with no one else around. We get out of the relationship and I'm going to cause all kinds of problems here in my life in one form or another. And it's not a conscious thing. It's not like I want that. I just want peace. I got out of the relationship with this toxic person. I want to have peace now. And then we get a little bit of peace and it feels really uncomfortable. And so then oh well, I got to get busy, or I got to do this, or I'm going to do this other thing. And so we create then chaos in our lives. And then, oh my gosh, I found the new love of my life. And often it's another narcissist, and we have to go through however many cycles of that until we start doing the work on ourselves. And I think we can discover along the way. It's like,
mhm.
this narcissist doesn't look like the last narcissist, but they're very similar usually.
Yeah.
And
Because
then, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so then usually what happens after that is we go through however many cycles of that. We've gained more awareness, more understanding. We know we know kind of what narcissists look like and all of that. And then usually we go into a relationship with an avoidant person, whether or not it's fearful avoidant or a dismissive avoidant, but
Mhm.
usually that's the next step in the evolution. And they feel really safe because they're really, for the most part, not, especially in the beginning, they're not really love bombing the same way that a narcissist does, and they don't do the abusive, vindictive, manipulative things. Now, you get further into the relationship, and then there's unhealthy behaviors that
Yeah.
that also look like narcissism from the outside,
Yeah.
but that's what I see with most people, and with myself. I've gone through these cycles. so so it's but the avoidant person feels safe after we've been with a narcissist, and in some ways, maybe many ways, they are safe compared to the narcissist because at least they're not vindictive. They're not
Mhm.
doing this on purpose. Whether or not a narcissist is aware that they're doing it on purpose or not, they are doing it on purpose. And the avoidant people, I don't think are, even though it just comes out unhealthy. So which is another toxic relationship usually that we get into, and it doesn't mean it's a toxic person necessarily, but the dynamic ends up being toxic,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And you mentioned, okay, people need to do the healing, those who get
Mhm.
out from the relationship. What is the healing that they need to do? Is this like low confidence, low self-esteem, low self-worth? Is it any of those, or is it something else that they need to work on so that they actually going forward, once they heal, they attract like a healthy relationship?
Yeah, yeah, and I think one of the major problems is there's no how to in all of this. You need better self-esteem. You need better emotional health. You need to work on these. Well, what's the how? How do I get here?
Mm,
How do I get better? How do I feel better about me? How do I settle into peace? How do I do all of these different things that everyone says, and all the self-help books, they say, okay, you need to do this and do this, and the how to, I think, is one of the hardest parts. And it's
yeah.
and it's not something that's taught as much, and I think it's harder to put that in a book as use these 3 steps and then you will feel better about yourself. And it works for some people, and for all of the rest of us, we're left wondering what's wrong with me and why can't I figure this out?
Mhm.
Because I try to feel better about me. I try to work on my self-esteem and all of those things.
Yeah.
And I just feel stuck, and maybe I get a little bit of movement, but I don't really move forward much in my life. And a lot of it comes down to awareness. And that's really the biggest thing that I focus on. And because without the awareness, we can't change anything in our lives. So if we aren't aware in the first place that we're perpetuating and creating chaos in our lives, we can't do anything about it. We feel a victim of our circumstances. Whether or not we feel like I know some people are they're touchy about that, and rightfully so. I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim. And I understand that. And I don't think that we are, even if we have been victimized. But the first step is the awareness. And so we start gaining awareness of little things in our lives. What are the things that I'm doing when I have time and space for peace? And then all of a sudden I need to go start a new business or get into a new relationship or start a new job, or I'm going to go run, 10 miles. And I've been sitting on the couch for the past 2 years. That all of these things are ways for us to, and it's not that any of those are bad things, but we use them as a way to create chaos in our lives. And I think, taking the time, most people I recommend, after you get out of a relationship, any type of toxic relationship, just take the time to make your life really boring, and just I mean, just really constant, boring, nothing going on. Automate everything you can, eliminate everything you can, and just do kind of almost nothing at all. And sleep a ridiculous amount because it takes a lot of, or we're exhausted. I mean,
Yeah.
we've just done rounds, we've just done rounds with Mike Tyson, or however you want to look at it in all of the unhealthy dynamics. And so we're going to need a lot of extra rest. And it's another thing that we beat ourselves up for. I'm resting too much. I'm sleeping too much. I mean, maybe you sleep 16 hours a day. Whatever it is, whatever you need is what you need.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but the awareness is the big first step in everything. And that's I'm grateful for every time I see something else, oh my gosh, this is why I'm doing this thing. Because it's the unlock of, okay, now I know what to do. Because now I'm aware that I was doing this unhealthy thing, or distracting myself or avoiding this thing, whatever it was. Because until we're aware that we're doing it, we can't become aware then of what's causing it. What's the emotion that's coming up? What is it? What's the feeling? However you want to look, what are the thoughts that I continue to think? We the With all of the awareness, and awareness leads to more awareness. And that's wonderful. Now, I do have to say the downside of this is we don't get awareness on all of the good things, and moving forward only. We get awareness of everything. So it seems like when we first really start gaining a lot of awareness in our life, it seems like our life is much worse than what it seemed before, because we have awareness of all of the things, and
Mhm.
continually more so. So then we see all of the bad things that we didn't really notice before. When we're in this drama, this chaos, we have so much noise in our mind. And so it's hard to hear all of the little subtle things that are going on below the surface. And the
Yeah.
more calm everything gets, the more awareness we gain, then we start seeing, oh wow, it's like when you're climbing up the mountain, and you're focusing on the trail and you're hiking, and what you're not paying attention to is, oh my gosh, I'm in a postcard. This area I'm in, it's a postcard that I'm in. That's
Yeah.
incredible. But it's like that with most of our lives, that we
Mhm.
don't see all of the things going on. And so then when we start gaining the awareness, we see all the wonderful things, and we see all the bad things as well.
Yeah.
And so continually working on leveling up our awareness, and then because then we see, okay, this is an unhealthy behavior that I have, and I'm aware now of why I do this thing. I do this thing because it's a coping mechanism that has been a necessity. I've needed to be able to have a coping mechanism for survival in the
Mhm.
situations that I've been in. But now I have peace in my life. And so now I need to, I don't want to say remove or get rid of, or, but work through, okay, I'm doing this because I don't feel safe, or because I'm uncomfortable when everything seems fine. And so allowing ourselves a little, some of this is exposure therapy,
Mhm.
because sitting in that discomfort of everything's fine, and I feel like I really need to get off the couch, and I got to go do something because this feels just, and I'm being lazy. I'm being lazy now. It's another thing we use to shame ourselves. I'm
Yeah.
being lazy because I'm sitting here in the peace that I said that I wanted.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to beat myself up because I'm not being as productive as maybe I could be or I should be. And so a lot of this, it's a gradual process, and it happens kind of very slowly, and then all of a sudden you'll make big breakthroughs,
Yeah.
because when you see, okay, wow, this is why I was doing that, then a lot of times most of those things that we'll be able to eliminate one little thing at a time and go, okay, I don't do that anymore because I'm aware that I was doing it. I was aware, and like with reacting to someone
Mhm.
else, reacting in a way that we don't want to. We don't realize until 2 days later, and then we're aware of it. Okay, and so then maybe we realize the next time a day later, and then maybe 2 hours later, and then we start to see it in the moment. And oh, I'm reacting again in this conversation, in this situation, in a way that I don't want to. And then pretty soon we become aware right in the moment when it happens. And then we don't react, and this, I wish I could say it's, just at the snap of fingers, but it takes time and repetition, and most of the time with most people, unless you have a practice or a coach, a therapist, somebody that can help you with these things, it's
Yeah,
very hard for us to do it on our own. I mean, I'm not aware of what's in. It's easier for me to see it in someone else,
yeah,
but for me to see it in myself, I need somebody else because we're stuck inside the jar.
yeah,
I'm in my own jar, so I can't see in the jar because I'm in the jar. So I need somebody else to look in the jar and say, "Hey, by the way, did you know that you're doing that?" Oh, yes, yes, thank you.
yeah, yeah. No, I understand. Yeah. And Kyle, would you like to talk a little bit how you work um with your coaching, with your program? Is it like how long it takes, like the commitment?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
So I'm pretty open to working with, I try to meet people where they are. So
mm-hmm,
I'm pretty open to working with them in whatever capacity they can. I realize not everybody can afford to pay for coaching. Um, as far as the way that I do my sessions, they're 1 hour sessions, they're one on one. It's very much a conversation, just like this. I'm
mm-hmm,
going to stop you maybe right in the middle. Hey, that thing that you just said right there. That's kind of the way that it looks in practice. It's very safe because it has to be. Um, and that's it's a huge part of everything that I do is and even in talking today, I talk about all of these hard things, but I try really hard to make sure that I don't express that, or I give the caveat so that it's not used for shame and judgment,
yeah,
because that hinders us in our progress of healing. And so that's a huge focus of everything that I do. Yeah, I'm going to point out all the different things that we're doing, but I do my best in every way I can to make sure that it's not, hey, you're doing this thing wrong, because we're not doing it wrong.
mm-hmm,
We've been surviving, and that's been an effective strategy for surviving. We just don't want to stay there. So and as far as timeline goes, I've worked with many clients over 2 years now. Um, there are some that a month or so, and it kind of gets them to a stable point where,
mm-hmm,
okay, I'm going to try it on my own now, or they don't want to have to continue paying, or I mean, everyone has different situations.
yeah, yeah,
So but yeah, a month to 3 months is a good starting place to get most people to a really stable point where they're aware of what's going on in their mind. It doesn't mean they're healed, it doesn't mean everything's fixed, but they're not, they're able to get out of bed and function and go to work and do all of those things, and they're aware of a lot of what's going on in their mind. They
yeah,
may not have corrected it all, most of us haven't, but they're at a pretty stable point.
mm-hmm.
And my consultations are free. I do an hour consultation as of right now, and they're free. Anybody can jump on. I'm happy to talk with anyone.
Okay.
And
Wow. Oh, wow, guys. So take this advantage and absolutely contact Kyle then. Kyle, will you just drop your links after we finish so people can
yeah,
contact you directly or
yep,
just message to Kyle directly?
yeah.
Yeah. This is amazing. And Kyle, just before we wrap it up, I would love to ask that question. If I remember, I ask all the guests, next level transformation or next level. First thing that is coming to your mind.
First thing, next level transformation.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that came to mind is we always will forever have a next level.
Mm,
And it's possible, I think, for everyone to reach that next level.
yeah,
And we deserve it.
absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Absolutely. Kyle, and so yeah, and that was actually a brilliant conversation. So thank you so much for being here with us. Just
Very
before
welcome.
yeah, and before we go, any final thoughts to the audience that you would like to say, to share?
I think being kind to yourself.
Hmm.
That is the biggest thing of all with all of this. Being kind to yourself, and even when you're not kind to yourself, because we notice we're not being kind to ourselves and then we beat ourselves up for it. And so, be kind twice. Be kind to yourself, and when you're not being kind to yourself, give yourself some grace, some compassion, and allow yourself to be kind to yourself in that moment. And continue trying that until you get there.
Yeah, beautiful message, Kyle. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, guys, for
Thank you.
watching. Yeah, appreciate you a lot. And guys, see you the next time. Kyle, thank you so much. I'm
You're
gonna stop
welcome.
the live now. Thank you.
That
One
was
sec.
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know, did I stop the live?
I don't know.
Let's see. Let's see if it stopped.